Well, welcome to this shared interest group on So You Want to Be a Speaker at NACM. Two things you're going to have to know right off the bat. Number one, wear good shoes. I have finally gotten rid of the heels. You'll notice they're lovely little green flats. And be ready to have some fun, because it's too easy to get stressed out. And after all, it's just NACM. So be ready to have some fun, participate in all the activities that go on. Let's talk about how you can get to be a speaker at NACM. If you think this is a public speaking class, I'm sorry to tell you it's not. If you're interested in a public speaking class and would like to see NACM offer one, then when you get your evaluation form tonight, in the comments section, put in there that you'd like to see a separate section on public speaking and how to be a great speaker. I don't know that I qualify as a great speaker, but I do qualify as somebody who knows intimately how you can get to be a speaker at NACM. My name is Pat Dugan. I am the educational consultant to NACM, and that means as part of my regular job, I work with the chair of the Conference Development Committee for NACM, who is the president-elect, to put together the educational pieces of this session, this conference, other conferences. And so we're going to talk about what that whole process is. From the beginning, when we develop the checklist, all the way to giving birth to the agenda, to finally having people show up at the conference and do their thing. That's my plan. This isn't an educational session in the sense that I'm going to talk to you for the next hour. I'm going to tell you what the process is, and then I'm going to let you share some of your experiences with speaking or some of your fears about speaking if you haven't done it yet. And we'll see if we can't all get something out of this session. Does that sound like an okay plan to you? This session is being recorded so that the people who aren't here but are just dying to be speakers at NACM but had to be someplace else can watch it later. So if you have a question, if you want to participate in the discussion, I strongly encourage that. But I would like you to use a microphone so that we can make sure we capture everything for everybody, and then Liz won't be having to do jazzercise in the back to remind me to get you to the microphones. So we're going to talk about how we get started. All of our conferences start with a call for proposals these days. That's a process that was put in place about 4 years ago or so. And so the president-elect puts together their theme for the conference, whatever they want it to be, and from there we develop a call for proposal document. And we ask you to tell us what you would like to talk about. We'll give some ideas in the call about sessions we would like to have presented. And then we let you tell us, what would this session be like? Who would be involved? What would you cover? What are your learning objectives, for example? How would you propose to do it? Would you be speaking by yourself? Would you have a panel of people? Would you be doing something very interactive? And we do this starting out several months in advance. And it takes a long time for that stork to get that agenda over to the president or the president-elect for approval. So you can find on the NACM website today, if you go there under the latest news, the call for proposals for the 2016 mid-year proposal is posted. We have also posted a statement from the future president, the presumed future president-elect, who will be Scott Griffith, who's with us today. He has developed the theme for the conference, expanding or building out from the core. I don't remember what we finally called it.
Extending out.
Extending out from the core. And along with that, there are instructions for what we mean in each area of the form. It is a fillable form now that you can complete so that when it comes to us at the National Center, we can generate a report instead of having to cut and paste various pieces from your proposal. And then we have a conference development committee that reviews those proposals. And they rate them, and we see, well, how many do we have that are attempting to address a technology matter or an interpreter matter or a leadership matter or a communications matter or a case flow matter or whatever it is. We then take those proposals and also look at what are the SJI priority areas, because the State Justice Institute is a big funder of this conference. And so we want to help them also address their priority areas. NACM also has a national agenda, and it has its priorities, and so we look at, are we hitting on all fields here, or do we need to fill in some more gaps? So when you find that proposal, the explanation sheet is there, the conference theme sheet is there, the proposal form, as well as a new document we created this year called Speaker Expectations. So we talk a little bit more about trying to raise the professionalism, help speakers be more comfortable coming in, because sometimes new people in the field don't really know what we're going to be wanting of them. So we've developed that as well. So on the website, you can find, right now it's under latest news, but you can also go to the conference page and you will find the call for proposals. When the conference website comes up, you will also see under the speakers tab up front, if you are selected, that's where we also post the speaker expectations. And when we get the bio information from you, that's where it goes. And when we start getting in materials from speakers, we post things right there on the website. As most of you know, have seen, we've gone green. And so we don't do much with paper handouts or anything in that regard anymore. So it's pretty easy. We've been consistent, although next year I'm pretty sure the picture won't be the Derby, but there will always be that tab up there for the speakers to find. The website up there, top where the yellow arrow is, right up there, the website is nacmconference.org. Right, but you can get there from the NACM Net site. NACM Net's the home page, and this is the separate conference site. Yes, Jim.
When you post the presentations, is there communication to the attendees that that's where they go? Because I've kind of ventured into some of the different classes, and I don't see a lot of people with iPads or who are actually following the presentations. They're just either making notes or just listening.
That's a good question. We do tell people that it's green and that things will be posted on that website, and we send out a lot of information ahead of time to the attendees. The most recent communication attendees would have been about a week ago, and it was things to know before you go. And we tell them we will have a Wi-Fi site here, and you should bring this because we are green, and so we won't be having paper handouts and all of that. Some people will choose to go there and follow along. Some people will print out some of the information ahead of time and bring it with them. Some people will wait till they get home and decide if they want to print it out or not. Some of it depends on the kind of session and whether or not people think they need that. Many of us have just been enculturated to have the PowerPoint, and then we read along with the presenter, or we take notes right off of the PowerPoint slide. I did something different this year that we haven't done in the past. If any of you, besides Jim, I'm looking in this room, I don't know if any of you are speakers this year, but what we did this year was preview the the PowerPoints that were submitted. Now, we used to ask for those PowerPoints about a month ahead of time because it made it easier for staff to get everything ready when we had to copy it all and ship it here. But then we went green, and so what we had to do was get it posted on the website. But we still asked for stuff way in advance. So we cut that time down, but we also know that not everybody gets their work done a month before they need it. If any of you have done any speaking before at all, I would venture to guess that most of you are thinking about changes when you walk in the room. But a lot of people still wait till the night before, the day before, to fine-tune their PowerPoints. This morning, we were receiving PowerPoints for some of today's sessions, so they're not always there for the attendees to get to. Yes?
You know what I would, and this is what he's speaking of, is I had a hard time finding where the PowerPoint was, so maybe if they were also listed under, if you go in under the
Uh-huh.
And if they were attached to the class itself?
They are supposed to be, when you go on to the digital agenda, there's supposed to be the speaker's name, which is supposed to have a link to the speaker's bio. There's supposed to be the speaker's materials, link, a PowerPoint, or resources if they've submitted them separately. If there aren't any there, it could be that a couple of things have happened. One, we haven't gotten any. Two, the speaker has asked to not have them posted until after the presentation because they don't want to give it away. Three, the presentation is large and we haven't been able to get it uploaded or there are problems with it. Four, we screwed up.
Yeah, I couldn't find, maybe it was me, could be even better.
They're supposed to be up there, and if they're not getting up there, that's something I can certainly check on. It's not something I personally do, but I certainly have access to the people that do, and we should
I was
be
one after,
checking.
you know, took a day to figure it out and went in under the speakers and found them all there, but, I don't know that intuitively.
I agree. It would be more convenient to just get them right off of the agenda, and that was the intent to start with. All right. So you can get that information, hopefully, there. And then when we look at the proposals in detail, we look at whether or not, first of all, you want money from us. Because the agendas look fancy, but if you knew what it took to get people where they are and what it's going to cost us, we sometimes have to make adjustments. We'll talk about cost more in just a minute. But we look at the knowledge and expertise of the proposed presenters, which is why it's important when you fill out your proposal that you tell us who's going to be working with you. Sometimes we'll get a list of 7 presenters, and I'll go back to them and say, sorry, 7 is too many. For a 1-hour session, 7 people won't even have time to talk. So please narrow this down. Also, if you have 7 people and you come back to us and say you need travel money or you need hotel nights, 7 people for somebody who's going to talk for 3 minutes becomes hard to justify. And we look at the experience, but not from the perspective that you've never spoken before, so we're not going to have you try out your stuff on us. We just look at what is the topic, what do we need, does anybody else know this person, how can we work with this person, where can we get more information on them. Because inexperienced people need a little more hand-holding, and so we want to identify that up front as well. We look at topic relevance. Does it meet our conference theme? Does it meet SJI priorities? Does it meet NACM's national agenda? Is it something that people have asked us for? Is it going to be relevant to a wide group of people, or is it so specific that nobody will really want to come to it? You just want to hear yourself speak. This year, for the first time, we're going to be asking for a proposed outline of your presentation. Sometimes people like to give us a one-liner. I'll talk about case flow. Well, we happen to have a 2.5-day case on case flow where I work, so when you tell me you want to talk about case flow, I want to know what you mean by that. When I go to the Conference Development Committee, I have to give them more information. So if we have 5 people wanting to present on case flow, we can say, this one means this one means that. And it helps us make better decisions, so as attendees, you get a better range of topics. In terms of delivery format, some things that work for some people don't work for other people. There was a time when we had all solo presenters. There was a time when we had all panels. And we've done things in between. And it's not that we have a preference for one or the other, we just want to know, because do we need a table? What kind of equipment do we need? How many microphones are we going to need? When we did the fireside chat yesterday, the format wasn't the straight table up front, it was a different, relaxed, conversational kind of proposal. So we want to know what we might need to do in terms of logistics, as well as provide some variety for the attendees. In terms of time, we want to know how much time you think you need for your session. Sometimes we have done multiple plenary sessions. It's been years since we've done it that way. Sometimes the sessions have been 45 minutes in a breakout. Sometimes they're 60, sometimes they're 75. We used to have an hour and a half. We kind of go back and forth. people seem to like having more shorter sessions to choose from rather than fewer longer sessions. But if your topic can only be done in this much time, we need to know that. For example, we had a judge speaking on human trafficking today. He said, I cannot do that session and do it justice in an hour. What we ended up doing is a part 1 and a part 2. So there are different ways that we can accommodate that, but we have to know. And then, as I said, we'd talk again about cost. The way NACM pays for this conference is a combination of revenue sources, one of which, a large one, is the State Justice Institute through a grant. And the State Justice Institute has limitations on how much we can pay speakers on a daily basis and how much we can pay for reimbursements. But depending on how many people need assistance, we sometimes run really close to the edge of a red bank account, and we sometimes just have to say no. There have been times when we've had so many presentation proposals that we're willing to do their presentation for no money. Their court would pay their travel, would pay their hotel, would pay their conference fee, everything. That gave them an advantage over somebody wanting a $700 airline ticket and 2 or 3 nights of hotel and conference registration fee and whatever. So we have had to play with that. Generally, we take the position, and you'll notice if you looked at the mid-year proposal, we generally take the position that this is a privilege for you as a presenter. It gives you exposure on a national platform, as well as an opportunity to give back to the profession and share your work. And that your court should be interested in your professional development, as well as the image and reputation of them being able to be your employer. We ask that your court pays for your expenses to attend this conference. If your court cannot, then we ask for justification. And that includes whether or not you need a night of hotel, or whether you need a hotel airline ticket or mileage because you live close enough to drive, or whatever it is. But we try and keep those costs down as much as we can. We do generally pay the keynote speakers some kind of honorarium or some kind of fee, depending on who they are and what they're doing and where they're coming from and what the offer was. The book, for instance, that you got today or yesterday from the keynote speaker was included with his fee to us. Sometimes we might get a judge who takes an honorarium and donates it to a local charity. Sometimes people waive it entirely. So it's a combination of things. We have often paid for, we've waived a registration fee, so at least if you can get here, you won't have to pay the conference fee on top of that. But again, if your court cannot pay that, we will consider it if you justify that to us. But we're not going to be just handing that out and making that offer to everybody. In general, I think it costs somewhere around, this is only my first annual conference that I've done, I think the mid-year conference cost us in the neighborhood of $7,000. This conference is costing us in the neighborhood of $30,000. Of course, it's a much bigger audience, much bigger needs for the hotel. More people means more food and beverage. So it's hard to say what the average cost is for a session. Some sessions that have 4 people obviously would cost more than a 1-person session.
Is that everything included, or is that just speaking and education?
That's just speaking and education.
There's no way.
Yeah, 2 of our keynotes alone were $20,000 this time. So, yeah, it adds up. So the different formats are important to us, and they can be changed, and we don't have a standard that says you must do this. But some people get confused about what it means, particularly when we talk about having a team presentation or having a panel. Because panelists tend to have a moderator, and oftentimes the moderator will want to also give a presentation. So we're trying to clarify that the moderator is really the coordinator of the session and will answer questions from my office, but when they're on site here, they will work with the panelists, asking questions, relaying them from the audience, And we don't want panels that have 6, 7, 8 people. I think last year at mid-year we had a panel that had 9 people, and we said, you know, that's maybe not the best way to do this. So we've started taking a little more proactive approach to that. But different formats will be interesting to the audience, and we'd like to explore those if you have an idea for how we should do something different from what we've done in the past. Our upcoming conference schedule is shown here. Next February, we will be in Mobile, Alabama. And I did a quick look to tell you what our regular attendance has been at mid-year conferences. In 2013, we had 287 people registered for that conference. In 2014, we had 324. And in 2015, we had 241. Location has a lot to do with it. Weather has a lot to do with it. Some states are in the midst of budget during the February cycle, so depending on where that falls, that could be problematic. The average number of attendees over the last 5 years, though, is 260 at a mid-year conference. At a mid-year conference, we have 2 keynote sessions, and this year we had 14 breakouts, plus 3 shared interest groups. Of those 14 breakouts, we had 4 sessions that repeated. So we're going to be hoping for more than 14 proposals to choose from. I think we had 30-some proposals, if I remember right, to look at. The annual conference next year will be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I put the thing in dates because I was going to look it up and I forgot, but Scott might know off the top of his head, do you?
Pittsburgh? No. Early-ish July.
Yeah. Annual conferences, 2013 had 390 people. Last year in Scottsdale, we had 675. This conference, we hit the magic 500. Average over the last 7 years was 525. With that, we had 3 keynote sessions scheduled, the plenaries in the morning. On Monday, we had 24 breakout sessions. Today we had 23. One speaker had to cancel at the last minute. We have 5 sessions scheduled for tomorrow, and we have 6 on Thursday. That's a total of 58 sessions, not including the keynotes. Of those 58, only 5 are going to be repeating. That's a lot of speakers. If every session has 2, that's a lot of speakers to coordinate because a lot of sessions actually have 4 and only a few of them have 1. But we need a lot to choose from when you're going to be trying to schedule 58 sessions. Plus, then we have 6 of the shared interest groups. So when you're running 6 concurrent sessions at a time, we like variety and we like interactivity. Yes?
How do you determine which ones repeat?
Well, that's an interesting question. Sometimes it depends on what the subject matter is. Sometimes it depends on who the speaker is and their availability. Sometimes it depends on how many requests we've had for that subject. Sometimes it depends on how many other sessions we have that might be similar, so we don't want too much of the same thing. In the case of this year, you'll have noticed that not all of the rooms are the same size. Some rooms are quite large. This is a medium-sized room. Some of them are small, and the people are spilling out into the hallway. The interesting thing is those people who've been down in Skybox, most of those sessions are ones that have been repeated because that's the smallest room, and people keep crowding into that session. I don't know. So it's really kind of what I recommend depending on what else is going. If we have a daily theme, I'm trying to place the sessions within the context of that theme. Sometimes a speaker will say, I can't be here on this day, I can only do this day. If somebody has 2 or 3 or 4 people, it's less likely they're going to be repeating because for one thing, when you have a panel of 4 people, it's hard to actually replicate that session. People just won't say the same thing. The audiences will have different questions and they will be somewhat different sessions. And they might say, well, 4 of us can't be here on this day, or I'm coming in for the morning, but I can't be there in the afternoon, and so they're not even an option. It just kind of depends. Sometimes, though, we have hotel rooms where every room is the same size. And so then it doesn't really matter so much in terms of, well, this session I can only have 40 people in this room, so maybe we'll repeat it in case more people want to come. Another one of those, yeah, I don't know. In 2017, we're going to be going to Portland, Oregon for the mid-year session, and then in 2017 annual, we will be in Washington, D.C. That conference is going to be very interesting. It's going to be a joint conference with the International Association for Court Administration. There will probably be some big names at that conference in terms of speakers. There's going to be a social event at the Library of Congress. But we are going to have an international audience, so I expect we'll be getting some proposals that will prepare to address an international audience. It will be an English-only conference, but if speakers from the other countries want to bring an interpreter or whatever, there is a funding source that's going to be handling some of that aspect. But we're going to be anticipating, I think, for starters, in the neighborhood of 750 people. So we're going to probably need a lot of sessions. I don't know. But this is what's on the schedule for right now. 2018 has not been planned, but as you can see, we're always looking forward. So if you don't get in for 1 year, you might get in for another year. When I was working on the mid-year conference this year, to align with some of the NACM core and the SJI priorities, we went back to proposals that had been submitted the year before but hadn't been selected, and asked people if they'd be interested in having their proposal reconsidered. And that has worked out well for us. So as you can see, the little colored spots are where we're headed, Alabama and Pittsburgh for next year. And we're hoping we'll get some good, productive conferences. When we pick a site for a conference, we look at where are there big pockets of members, or where has there been a request for NACM to come in. The mid-year generally is viewed as a more regional kind of conference, and we may partner with, for instance, the Georgia Association or the Arizona Association or something like that. So when we go to Alabama, we will be drawing on people from Georgia, from Florida, from Mississippi, Louisiana, all areas that have a lot of NACM members as well. And yet we tend to go across the country. Last year we were in Scottsdale, Arizona in the summertime, and we were in Savannah, Georgia for the mid-year conference. So we get around. We have a contract to record sessions, and we generally record 2 per day. 2 rooms per day. And then we record and live stream the keynote sessions. So if you were to become a presenter for NACM, there's an opportunity, maybe, for your session to be recorded and then posted on the NACM website. Even if your session is not recorded, we generally have a host and a reporter in each room. So every session is written up, and then a summary is published in the Court Manager Conference Edition. So there is a little bit of residual effect for speakers who are interested in that. So if you have questions for me, you can find me by email. You can find me on the phone. I brought my business card in case you have specific questions you want to ask me. But what I would like to do, first of all, is give Scott Griffith an opportunity to talk to you. He is the incoming president-elect and will be the person making all the final big decisions about the conferences for next year, with a little bit of advice from me from time to time.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if I need this or not, but
You do, because we're recording.
I should use it. Thanks for coming this afternoon. Pat, that was really helpful. I think this is the first year we've done a SIG on this. Do you know, Pat, in recent times? This is the first one. I think this is really helpful. I'm really glad we're recording it. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. How many of you have served on the Conference Development Committee? It's a rather large committee, and so there's a lot of voices on the calls. If you haven't, but you think you might be interested, the conference development is meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 to 9:30. Stephanie Hess, the president-elect, is the chair of the committee. She'll preside over the meeting tomorrow, and we'll do a little bit of, get some feedback on how things are going this week, and I'll talk a little bit about the call for next year. But the other thing, and there's a number of subcommittees that are part of the Conference Development Committee, and one of them is a subcommittee that's dedicated to reviewing the proposals that we get in. So if you'd like to be a part of that, I would really, really welcome your input. The only thing we ask is that if you do volunteer to be on that subcommittee, we ask that you not submit a proposal. Well, we've got Mr. Ethics here, and so we don't want to run afoul. So if you think you might want to submit a proposal for mid-year, we'd ask that perhaps you wait and not join that subcommittee right away. But it is absolutely worth it to go to our website, and if you look on the latest news section in the lower right, you'll see the call for proposals and the instructions. And we've fine-tuned every year the rubric for scoring them. It's on a scale of 1 to 5, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and it's been really helpful. And I'm really glad you mentioned, Pat, that potential speakers who aren't selected for a given conference, we keep those proposals, and it's not uncommon at all for Pat to reach back to those folks and see if they might be interested. The other thing I wanted to ask is, has anyone, I only recently, a couple of months ago, became familiar with what are called Ignite, an Ignite form of presenting. I think I'm kind of late to this party, but maybe I'm not the only one, because you guys are looking like I did when I first heard about Ignite proposals. So this was something at a conference down in Austin. The way this works is, I don't know if you use PowerPoint. You may know about this, Pat, but you've got 5 minutes and you've got 20 slides, and the slides advance automatically. And it's a great way for you to get a group of people. In the presentation I saw, it wasn't 9 people, but there was someone who took about 7 or 10 minutes to sort of lay out what the issue was. And then it was 6 different people. This was all programs designed to help self-represented litigants. And then you had 6 different states that were represented, and each one of them did an Ignite presentation. Each was limited to 5, and the slides advance automatically. So, and it was great. It didn't feel rushed. The people who did the presentations, obviously, and I think if you're going to do one of those, you really, really have to prepare, right? And you've got to really have a script. But the folks who did them did such a great job. It didn't feel rushed, and it was not trying to get a sip of water out of a fire hose. It didn't feel like that. It felt very measured, and it was terrific. So I'm going to talk to Pat further about it, but I'd be really interested, depending on the topic, to see proposals like that. It's just a good way to give voice to people, particularly if you've got something that sets up like this topic did, where you want to see a comparative sort of summary among states on a particular issue. The other thing, and I don't know, I haven't talked to Pat about this, so it's a little funny to throw this out, but was anyone at eCourts in Las Vegas back in December? Jenny, you were there. Do you remember they had a couple of sessions where, and I thought it was really well done. I don't know if we have the capability of doing this, and it might be expensive, so it might be something to consider, but there was a panel of folks, but the person who was moderating would throw up a question, and then multiple choice answers would come up on the screen, and each one had a number that you would text if that was your response. And so, and eCourts was pretty crowded. So people are there looking, listening, looking at the options, texting in their response, and the responses populate, it's a live, it was a little clunky, but it was really great. So the panelists, it was a real-time. Oh, did John do some of that? Okay. Responders, okay. Anyway, so, yeah, and I think it's great because it, yeah, automatically. Well, it went over really well at eCourts, and it sounds like you guys have experience with it. Absolutely.
It's great for a really detailed, like a topic that's not necessarily fun, that
yeah.
you need to teach, right?
Yeah.
It's got a lot of factual data.
I had
That's okay.
The one question I had for any of you on that thing is, it appeared at least that the responses are more or less just grouped together anonymously. Was there any component in the software to be able to identify who did what? There isn't. Yeah.
But the responders were numbered, at least 10 CCs.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've not heard of anybody who'd be able to get. Yeah, but I mean, it'd be like, you know. Okay.
Because you do, like, you do know that it was responder 1, 6, 9, 12, so if you put a name with that.
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be possible.
Okay. I mean, well, yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention is you all would have gotten yesterday evening the email asking for your input, the survey ranking the sessions and that sort of thing. And I hope you all know, but if you don't, you certainly need to know that all those responses are compiled by staff at the center, and when the board gets together at our fall board meeting, which is usually in October, this year it's a little bit later, we go over that report in detail, and it's a really great report. And so please take time to give feedback. And I know it's a survey, and they can sometimes, it's easy to sort of wave them off, but we really, really value the responses. They're very, very helpful. And selfishly, I'm really hoping we get lots of good feedback. And then anyway, finally, our call for proposals and the instructions are on our website. The due date for proposals for the mid-year will be the end of July. We may have to extend that, but right now we're at July 31st. We wanted to make sure we had enough time between this conference and the due date to allow people to get back and talk to colleagues or just think about what they might want to present on. If you have submitted proposals to NACM before, and I'm thinking that some of you have, take a look. Make sure you take a look at the instructions. We've changed it a little bit. Not in ways that will matter a whole lot, but in ways that you'll want to know about before you charge into preparing a proposal.
So once you submit a proposal by the July 31 deadline, then we will take a couple of weeks to look at them and determine whether or not we have to ask you more questions to make sure we have a complete proposal. And then we will be preparing summaries of those to give to whoever's on the conference development committee. And depending on the size of that committee, Scott may choose a select group to score the proposals. So when he said 1 to 5, it's not like every proposal is going to be all of you submitting and you get a 1, you get a 1, you get a 3, you get a 5. But every quality that we're looking for, your experience, your knowledge, will have a score from 1 to 5. So you may get a cumulative score of maybe 60 or something like that. And then we will discuss those and say, well, these people all scored high. But if 15 of those proposals, for instance, are all on technology, we may say, well, we'll take the top 3 or 5 on technology, and then the rest of them get pushed off, and then we start filling in some of the other sections. Once we have the preferred list of people, that's when I start contacting them to do speaker negotiations. Do you really need $1,500? Are you sure you can't do this? Your justification wasn't complete. We can only offer you $500. We can offer you 1 night of hotel. I can't put you on Tuesday. I can only put you on Monday. Would that work for you? Some people are very particular about when they speak. They just will not speak after lunch, or they don't want to be the last one of the day. And so I have to go back and forth and try and fill in the agenda. That can take a little while. I also have to be cognizant of what the hotel logistics are and that kind of thing. And so if we get proposals in by July, and by the middle end of August, I can get things out to the development committee, and we can get ratings and stuff done in September and start getting negotiations done. Our goal would be to have a draft of the agenda early October, probably approved by the board, maybe even before the board meeting this year, because the board meeting's a little late. So even if we get a board-approved agenda by November, while that seems a little late, that's still December, January, into February for the mid-year conference. And my thought is, boy, you've been thinking about doing this since you submitted a proposal in July. So when I ask you for your bio and I ask you for your speaker agreement and I ask you for your PowerPoint by January, and then you tell me you can't get, well, you know, we end up doing a lot of negotiating right up until the time of the conference. But our timeline right now is looking like July, August, September-ish before we would be getting decisions made. And it seems like a long, big vacuum where you don't hear anything, but no news is good news until you get a no thank you letter. So we will contact people one way or the other and let them know if they've been selected or not. Yes?
Sorry. You talk a lot about there's like different lists of topics. So you have different places like TMCEC is the same way. There's different lists and groups that submit. Criminal Court of Appeals decides a lot of that. So how do you, because like normally they tell us a list of topics and say, I think you'd be good to teach that. Or, I mean, just so you have an idea of what you're looking for, is there a place to go that tells you those topics?
The call for proposals and the instruction page and the theme page will lay out what we're looking for specifically. But there may be times when we look at the list and we say, wow, we've got, for instance, for this conference, I think we had 14 proposals on technology. We said, we don't need 14 proposals on technology. We wanted to make sure that the NACM guide on IT governance was included, and so we went to the speakers and said, we'd really like your session, but you have to include this. Can you do that? Or sometimes we have said, sometimes people put in 2 or 3 proposals. We say, well, we'd like you on this one, so would you be willing to withdraw that one? Or we can't have both of these, so maybe we want you to prioritize if you've submitted several of them. I just, for example, submitted 5 proposals for this conference. We sent them back to them and said, you tell us which ones are your priorities out of all of those areas. So we use those evaluations seriously when people make recommendations. I'd like to hear more on this. I'd like to hear this speaker, that kind of thing.
But it needs to be linked to a core, ideally.
Yes, or an SJI priority area. Sometimes we have to help you do a little interpreting of that. I mean, a lot of things could fall under leadership. A lot of things could fall under ethics, but some fall there better than others. And so that's the judgment call that Scott will ultimately make. So, other questions? Yes.
This is my first attendance here at one of the NACMs. Very interesting. I am the network manager for the state of Florida judicial branch, so I have all kind of customers. I think I have like 6 to 7 flavors of ice cream. But that being said, it is good for me to understand the legal aspects, which I have a good handle on, at least from Florida, I tend to think, and then the technology, obviously, and then how do we blend those together. Here, I'm not just looking at the printed schedule and having read through the stuff. There are like little snippets of technology, but there doesn't seem to be a defined track for leadership, legal matters, management. Are there any considerations for adding tracks and session tracks for throughout the conference for people in the future?
I think that's a really good question, and at this point we don't have a defined plan. We've talked about whether or not a track for new court managers and experienced ones would be good. We've talked about whether or not the early career professionals who need mentors should have a track for them where we do a lot of nuts and bolts stuff. We've talked about whether we should have a strict technology section or something else, but it hasn't played out that way. But as I said, this is my first time. The chair Scott sits in changes every year, and so if people would be interested in pursuing that, I'd like to hear more about how you think that could work and what it would take to meet some of your needs. NACM is always interested in meeting the needs of its members, and if there are enough people who think like you, it would probably make my life easier if I said everything has to fall into this track on this day. It's a good point.
I see that a lot, what he's saying.
Yeah. we have a few minutes, and this is supposed to be a shared interest group, and I know there are a couple of people in here who have spoken at our conferences before, so I would like to put a couple of them on the spot and ask them, what is it like to speak at NACM? And I'm not sure this mic, I think you have to get really close in order for it to work. So I'm going to, can you hear me okay on this one, Liz? Can you hear me on this one or the other one better? They're both the same? Well, then I'll use this one. Okay. I'm going to ask Janet quickly. She spoke yesterday, and I'm going to ask her just to give us a little bit of advice for somebody who wants to speak at NACM.
My advice would be faithful to the deadlines and the preparation timelines, because that will get you credibility. Submit your proposal and follow the instructions. When they give you a deadline to submit your PowerPoint or your materials, adhere to the deadline. Don't just blow it off, because you will lose credibility. I have, however, missed deadlines, so I would email in advance and say, can I please have 3 more days or another week? And they've usually accommodated me. My advice is also, don't plan on standing up and lecturing. Whenever I'm putting a session together, I try to weave in adult education principles for learning and have people do different techniques and engagement and group discussion. Don't plan on just standing up and reading your content or lecturing us on your content, because you know, sitting in sessions, that is not fun. And if it's after lunch, you're tired. If you're not comfortable the first time, you might consider pairing with someone else as a team to present. You might want to talk with someone who's presented before and get their pointers. It always helps to go to sessions and watch and see the role models that are already up there. That would be my advice. Did I miss some key point you wanted included?
That's great, but you did trigger something for me. And I would be remiss, especially with Jim in the room, if I didn't mention it. One of the other things I took on this year for the first time is when your PowerPoints get submitted, I also look at those before we put them up. So for example, I told you I may have to call you about your proposal, but let's say you get the green light, you're going to do it, and then you submit your PowerPoint, and then I say like, wow, I don't know if this is going to work or not. So I may contact you and say, I'd really like your session to be successful, because frankly, if you look good, I look good. But this is a lot of slides, and I'm not sure you can get through it, and I want to help you make sure that the audience is going to be focused on you, because you're the message. So let's see if we can't make your PowerPoint that you're going to give to the group a little different maybe from the presenter notes that you might have drawn your PowerPoint by. So I've sent back PowerPoints to people saying, would you reconsider? And by and large, people are like, wow, that's a really good idea. Yeah, I can do that, I can do this. And our goal is to help you give a better presentation. We don't want the audience reading your presentation, and we don't want you to default to that mode either. So while I don't have a lot of time to sit down and actually help you draft your PowerPoints, I can sometimes take a quick look and give some suggestions for using graphics or rearranging a few things or helping make the presentation a little more palatable. So we had a comment back there, and then Peter, I'd like you to talk to the group, if you wouldn't mind.
My question for you is that, in my opinion, going through adult learning, some of the best models I've seen are 2, probably 3 individuals with all kind of the same topic. And you talked about, well, if you're team teaching, maybe you can get that together. Do you team people up who may be on the same topic to go through a session saying, hey, you could be more effective with 3 people here, or a facilitated discussion?
That's a really good idea. I have not done that so far. I have said 5 people is too many. Which are the 4 you want to keep? But I haven't said gee, how would you like to add somebody to your session? I think that could be a good way for NACM to mentor other people, or if people were to contact me and say, I'd kind of like to do it, but I don't want to do it by myself. If I knew that, but that's a good idea. I have to give that some thought about how I could make that offer to people. Peter has done a lot of speaking at NACM and other places, and so if you'd like to share a couple of words of wisdom, we'd like to hear that too.
Sure. Maybe the first thing is if you're put on the spot like I've just been put on, and you can't think of a thing to say, you can always say, I would like to reiterate and underscore what Janet has just said, and then repeat everything she says. Definitely engage the audience. I really think that I totally agree with Janet. She and I have done presentations together, and getting the audience to interact with you, I think, increases and enlivens the presentation immeasurably. Another thing, and I will bet that Patricia will give me her tennis backhand by saying this, I like video clips. Test out the tech on the presentation the morning before you run your presentation, because you want to make sure that your video runs. You do not want to be up at the front of the room and say, we're now going to play the video, and nothing happens. And yeah, when it does happen. And it's happened to Janet, and it's happened to me when we tried to do that. So always test out, particularly if you have a video clip that you're going to run, make sure it runs and runs effectively.
Thank you. Questions for any of our speakers or for Scott? Jim, you are presenting. Maybe you want to tell us what the process was like for you.
First of all, this is my first time putting in a proposal and going through the process with NACM. And speaking to the state courts is going to be the first time I've ever done this. All of our speaking is done on the federal level, and we speak all over. And I want to commend your organization. You're probably the most professional, thorough, front to end process for going through, clear definition of what you're looking for. You made it really easy to put the proposal in, and it's far better than anything I've seen in other areas of the speaking engagement, so I commend you for that. So, you know, for me, it was a very simple process, very straightforward. The communication lines were great. You did freak me out when you shot me back the email about my presentation, which required me to go back and try it out 3 times before I came back and said, no, we're good. We're good. So that part of it was a blessing, because, you know, as a person who, anytime you get up and you want to share information, you want to make sure that, you know, you're presenting everything and people are they're gonna be happy with it, and they're gonna enjoy listening to what you have to say. And so you want to get the flavor and the feel. And I think some of the way you set up what to expect as a speaker and what you're looking for was really helpful in helping me figure out, how am I going to present? Because the way I think I'm going to present tomorrow is going to be different than what I've done before, because of the interaction, getting the audience more engaged. So it's been a huge benefit to me to understand, how do I create my presentation to meet the expectations of your audience? And I'm banking on that you know your audience better than I do. And so I'm taking your advice, and we'll see what happens. I'm really excited. After lunch.
Yeah, the new people get the after lunch slot. All right, well, remember then, you want to have some fun, have good shoes, and repeat whatever somebody else says if you lose your place. Other than that, I guess we're done. It's 3:15. It's time for a break. The next session will start at 3:30, and then you can all bring your hats tonight. We're going to be meeting downstairs to go out to Churchill Downs.